Thank you for being here tonight. In line with our Destination 2020 goals addressing safety and security, we share the following information. Restrooms are located at the far end of the hall, directly across the atrium. An automated electronic defibrillator, an AED, is located across the hall in a white box, and a first aid kit is mounted on the wall by the second exit. We do not conduct evacuation drills during our meeting. So, if an alarm sounds, an alert is announced, this is the real thing. Please begin to take safe action immediately. In the event we have to evacuate this building, there are 4 exit doors located on your right, and they all have a lit exit sign over them. Once you enter the atrium, proceed quickly along the safest route to a door leading out of the building. If you do not have a vehicle here, or it's unsafe to enter your vehicle and you need a place to wait for help, we have designated the parking lot next to the gas station as our rally point. If you see something that is dangerous, we encourage you to speak up and clearly alert the room of the danger you see, and we encourage everyone to quickly begin to take safe action. Information will be provided throughout the event as available so everyone can best decide the safest action to take given the current situation. And an addition for this month, Mr. Donley, please.
Well, let's see. This meeting's safety tip is to make sure you have an ABC fire extinguisher. That's an extinguisher that will handle all different types of fires, and read and understand the instructions. They also make a good battering ram if you have to get through a door that's jammed or take care of anything like that. They also make a good defensive weapon in this pinch. Holiday lighting creates an electrical fire hazard. Boxes and wrapping paper create a fire hazard. And if you deep fry your turkey, first of all, make sure you thaw it completely. And your fryer catches fire, you will have a chemical fire. Do not throw water on a chemical or electrical fire. It will just make things worse. Use your ABC fire extinguisher. Slips, falls, trips. Please remember that falls are a leading cause of injury and worker injury within the Anchorage School District. Remember these common tips to help you navigate the winter parking lots and playgrounds safely. Wear the right shoes and wear grippers to help you move safely around. 3 points of contact when exiting a car. Do not carry heavy loads or awkward items on slippery surfaces. Get a cart or get assistance. Keep both hands free and watch where you are walking whenever possible. Let the BPO know if areas are unsafe and need more attention. Call the mayor's office if the sidewalk needs plowed. Oh, that's not on here. I just use handrails on steps. Last and not least, walk like a duck, quack, quack. Smaller steps help maintain your balance on slippery surfaces. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Donley. Koyana from Ms. Snelling, please.
Koyana, a Central Yupik word for thank you, is also the name of our site-based award of appreciation. Awards can be given to any employee or volunteer in recognition of achievement, service, or dedication. Koyanas can be viewed or submitted by filling out an online Koyana form through the ASD website. One Koyana will be randomly selected from the website to be highlighted at bi-monthly board meetings. Koyana, this goes to Cody Bryant in the maintenance department. Cody Bryant from the maintenance department was very responsive when Clark Middle School needed assistance with a fire alarm reset late in the day on Monday. Cody and the entire maintenance department deserve a kudos for their hard work. And this was submitted by a Clark Middle School administrator.
Thank you very much. And for our opening statement, Ms. Spencer.
We want to welcome you to our board meeting and thank you for attending and supporting the work of the Anchorage School District and this board. The board thanks students, parents, teachers, staff, school business partners, and the entire community for your investment in our district with your time, your talent, and your tax dollars. As partners, we will respect your time and make this meeting as effective and efficient as possible. If you are unable to be physically present for the entire meeting, you may choose to tune into the Municipality of Anchorage's Channel 9 to watch any school board meeting. Meetings are also streamed live and available on demand via the ASD website. Recordings of meetings are available on YouTube through the agenda. To access, find the desired meeting and board docs and click the Watch Video button. Recordings are time-stamped to the agenda for easy access and closed caption in compliance with Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. The primary purpose of the regular business meeting of the Anchorage School Board is to recognize excellence, receive reports, approve policies and contracts, as well as decide on the rules and processes followed by the board to facilitate orderly decision-making. The role is to govern, not to solve management issues. My name is Kaylee Spencer, and I'm the student representative to the board. I was elected to serve through the ASD Student Advisory Board. Although my votes are only advisory, I offer student voice to this body.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as written.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as is. We move to the report section of our agenda. Dr. Bishop, Superintendent update, please.
Thank you, Madam President. With this brief update, I want to share, I thought that I owed you, the board and the public, a little bit more explanation in regard to our enrollment versus average daily membership. And the data that we've been providing was accurate. It's just that sometimes we provide you enrollment and talk about kids through our doors, the number of kids, but when we talk about budgeting, it's average daily membership, or the ADM. So I'm just going to share a little bit of information that Jim and his team put together with me so that we can talk about the differences. And then our next meeting, as we move into the pro forma budgeting, we are going to talk about the state funding formula and then how the ADM fits in that. So with that, we redesigned this, and if you look at the top, 30 September of 16, and then we have 30 September of 17. And as you can see, the difference in our total enrollment is 637 students. And I want you to know that enrollment is pretty much the number of heads, the number of students that pass through the doors of ASD schools. And that's inclusive of correspondence kids, because our correspondence kids do have home bases, and they touch base and they come in and do their ILPs and work with their teachers as well. So if you look at total enrollment in K-12, that includes special education pre-K as intensive needs. So our pre-K that is paid for is the special education pre-K, and it is all intensive needs. That's how they're funded. We also have additional PK in our grants, and we did increase that by 30 students, and that would be grants that we get. We get an early childhood grant from DEED to run preschools, as well as we have students in preschools come into our schools that are paid for by title grants. These two funding sources, because they're outside of the ADM, they're not funded through ADM, they're funded through grants, so we can't recount them. But wanted the board to know they are included in the number of heads that come into our building. So when we look to staff schools, we look at kids in classrooms, not FTE or ADM. And I'm just going to talk why we have increased revenue but fewer students in some categories, and how this all really fits together. So to start, enrollment pretty much is you're counting heads, how many students actually come through your doors. When we moving into our budget and looking at our ADM, or average daily membership, which is the metric used that starts the formula, we have to look at full-time equivalents of students. Very similar to full-time equivalents of our employees is someone part-time or full-time. We have to start looking at that as well. And the state has statute in regard to FTE, and when we count full-time equivalents, a student that is in our schools for 4 hours or taking 4 courses, if they're in high school, they're considered full-time. They're funded as a 1.0. However, if our students are only taking 2 courses or at least the minimum of 2 hours, they would be a 0.5 FTE. And FTE is counted in quarterly increments. ASD can share FTE with another school district. In fact, IDEA, a statewide correspondence homeschool, has many students taking courses with us. And if they are with us for 2 courses, half of an FTE counts for us if they're enrolled during that 20-day period in October. So when we look at ADM, we're going to look at that further in a minute. It's going to show portions and parts of a student. And of course, we don't have sections of a student. It's just that it's a numeric number that then speaks to the full-time equivalent. And the full-time equivalent, that comes about by an enrollment and how long are kids enrolled. So we might have 2 half-time students who actually cross through our door that only count as 1 FTE. Okay, so with that, that's the enrollment summary. When we move to the average daily membership, if you ever see ADM, this is strictly the budgetary metric of how a student unit or an FTE is moved through the formula. And then annually, there is an OASIS, which is the state system, like, what do you call it, business system. It's where the state keeps information on students. It's called OASIS. Ours is called, what's our student information system? Q. Ours is called, how could I forget Q? So the state's is an O for an OASIS, and we're Q. So the state student system, student count system is OASIS, and that's how we report up everything from grades to enrollment to parent report cards. So every year during the first 20 days of October, the average daily membership is compiled in a state database in order to determine revenue. The comparison between projected revenue and actual revenue often results in budget adjustments, and you're going to see some of those today. So overall, our average daily membership, which is our base ADM as well as correspondence, and base ADM are all the students in schools, plus correspondence students that fall at the end of the formula, because correspondence students are not given a 1-to-1 ratio. Any student that is a base gets one FTE for 1. 1 FTE for a correspondence student is 90 cents on the dollar. Okay, so we actually were down in our ADM. So not only were we down in our enrollment, we were also down in our ADM. And you can see that those two numbers are different, however, because you can have 2 students could equal 1 ADM because it's an FTE count. Just to show you the major multipliers, interestingly enough, for our major multipliers, we had increases from our projected. So correspondence, we actually have 45.68 increase in ADM, and for intensive needs, we're actually up 42 ADM. And because those, I know that those are full-time students, it's 42 students. So that adjusts the state revenue for our district. So when we talk about how could we be down enrollment but be okay financially, it's because the enrollment fell in different categories that generate funds. And those categories are not only in intensive needs, but also in the school size factor, as well as the area differential. And those are some of the items that are in the BSA formula that we're going to cover next week. So at the state level, we have a basic need, and that determines the local contribution. Off of that basic need, the local contribution is given at 100% maximum. So I always want to say, because I've been in places where local government and local municipalities do not support education 100% of what they can, Anchorage does. So that funding was $209,478,622. So the total funding, as you can see, is actually in the black by $307,116.36. Now, the ADM is a shortfall of 766. It is that less than projected in the FY18 budget. So essentially, in our ADM projection, we were down from last year, not our projection, but from last year, we were down 746 ADM, or full-time equivalents, from last year. So we projected 270 less, but we were actually an additional 476 less. So the increase in intensive needs students in the foundation formula increased the overall combined. That was the major contributor. There were other contributors as well, but when you actually look at the formula, that's where the majority of the difference arrived. But the additional costs are still being determined. So what we do is kids come into us with IEPs, we get them into classrooms right away, we assess the additional needs. With intensive needs, one of the qualifiers is that an aide is needed in 1-to-3 ratio. And so many times we can find efficiencies when we have the 1-to-3. If we're over and there's 4 students, we would need to hire another tutor. So we're reassessing those, looking at where kids arrived in schools and seeing what the needs are and working closely with those classrooms. So that is essentially the difference between enrollment, the number of students who walk in our doors, FTE, how we count our FTE. Remember, it's 4 hours or 4 courses. And then finally, the last one is the average daily membership. And all of these items are run through a formula to create the adjusted average daily membership, which is what we're going to talk about. And I know that it's been mentioned several times about, you know, these students generate this, these students generate this money. And I want you to know that in a district of our size, the monies are provided over the scale to have a district meet needs of kids. And some kids, generally elementary schools, a lot less expensive than high schools. So you can actually understand, it is true, our elementary schools pay for secondary education in our district. Similar to the multiplier for career tech, we spend thousands, probably millions more than what the state has in the multiplier. It's because that's what we believe in. We believe in that type of an education. We spend more on ELL, we spend more on special education, we spend more on gifted than are actually generated in the formula. It's because that is the program for which we've chosen to offer ASD kids. So money in the formula does not follow the child by formula. However, when we assign and the board assigns ratios to school and staff schools, that's how the money, if you will, follows the children, because where the children are going to school is where we hire staff and have programs to meet the needs. So I just wanted to share that. The next piece of this, if we could just go to the coming soon.
Do we want to stop for questions?
I was just going to finish up with
one? Okay.
this. So coming soon was the kind of the picture of the average daily membership, and the school size factor matters. That was mentioned by Mr. Bingham, and we're going to go specifically into these next time. The cost area differential, Member Donley has been speaking about that, especially in that, that is the ICER study that was requested in regard to different places of Alaska giving different amounts of money. The special needs factor includes those 4 special programs. There's just a multiplier put in for those programs. There's an additional 1.5 multiplier for vocational or career tech. I talked about at the end of the formula correspondence kids. For every 10 correspondence kids, you only get 9. Okay? And for then intensive needs kids, for 1 child, there's a multiplier of 13. That's when I talk about how those numbers fit in at the end of the formula as compared to the beginning of the formula. And we're just going to learn more about that when we get into budget. But I referenced them, so I thought I should share. So we can go back to the ADM page and any questions.
So I just want to say, so even though right now it looks like we actually don't have a funding issue, we don't know what the needs of these students are, and if they have specific needs that we aren't able to match with our current staff, this could still end up being a deficit.
Madam President, that is true, and I do believe we will have the needs. We had we've been operating, before we knew that we were going to be intensive needs over, 4 additional teachers were hired in September to meet our SBBS schools. And that was before we knew that we actually had this number. So we want to address any concerns that we have. And just so you know, one of the items in the formula that's quite tricky statewide is that intensive needs or any student can move in and out at any time of the year. But there's only funding established at the first 20 days. So, but we will serve kids who come to us no matter what. And we have a lot easier time doing it because of the economy of scale than many small school districts do. But a student could have started somewhere else in our state and then come into us, and we would have to adjust to meet the needs of every child.
And then my follow-up question is, so if I recall correctly, we're going to know maybe by the end of February what those budgetary impacts would be, because that, of course, will impact our 19 budget.
Yeah. Madam President, we will bring another budget revision to you at the beginning of the year, and then we will then have projections moving into next year. Yes. But these numbers will be audited, and generally we're 2 to 5% that are denied. So it may not be 42. It might be a couple kids taken off.
Okay. Other board members have questions? Please continue.
Thank you. I just felt like I was actually going crazy last time trying to figure out the differences and what was published. So Jim and I are on the same page and we get it. So state capital improvement grant, this is really, really super good news for ASD. It doesn't happen very often. And Tom is going to give more specifics, but we turned in our CIP list to the state in end of September. We brought it through the board September, October. And in the ranking, it doesn't, like I said, happen very often, but Rogers Park, because of the price, is kind of small. It's only under $2 million project. They boosted it up on the list because of the work that we had pre-done on that. And Rogers Park Elementary made the CIP list for the state. So DEED is going to provide 1.1 of the 1.7 million project cost. So ASD share is going to decrease, and there'll be a board memorandum on December 4th. And Mr. Roth, if you want to, this is the work of our people kind of pushing this. Is there anything you want to add about that?
Thank you, Dr. Bishop, through the president. Absolutely, we did get very good news last week in capital planning and construction, where we did get notified about this, and it's significant, as the superintendent mentioned. In the fiscal year 18 capital budget, the legislature allotted $3.5 million for the major maintenance grant fund, of which 1.1 million will be dedicated to the roof project for Rogers Park. And I do want to acknowledge there is a brain trust that works in capital planning construction that really pushed this over the last couple of years. This submission first went in for this specific project in 2015, and it has been kept on. So Rachel Molina Loden and Dana Menendez, who work for Mr. Fennis, have really pushed this thing forward. So they deserve the credit for it.
We got over $1 million, so that's good. And that notice came in at the end of the week, so we're pretty thrilled about that. And then finally, Madam President, on Thanksgiving, I just want to reflect on my thanks for every Anchorage School District staff member who works hard on behalf of students. It just so happens that last week was American Education Week, a week that honors teachers who spend innumerable hours working with our children, and also the staff who keep our students safe, transport our students, prepare their food, and keep their schools clean, and so much more. Some of the good things that have happened, we just recently hosted at West High the ASA State Music Festival, and ASD students represent over half of those participants who received state honors. We're thankful for the support of our community and working with United Way, and last week we also just unveiled another reading oasis given by a family interested in philanthropy for schools at Willow Crest Elementary School. Strengthening competencies throughout leadership training. We have training going on. Our coaches for basketball, football, and volleyball are attending a training called Coaching Greatness. It is exciting to see KCC begin a new chapter as well, and we'll be shortly presenting KCC's plan in January to add 300 full-time students to their already full school, continue to educate about 900 part-time students, but have a full-time strand that will work in our favor in generating funds because it will become a school site, and we look to increase our revenue by over $1 million by serving more kids and what they like to do. Also, ASD student Jordan Baker recently placed 12th in the World Skills Competition in Dubai. The World Skills Competition gives people under the age of 22 a chance to show off their vocational skills on a world stage. If you can remember, she represented America in the bread baking category, and that win qualified her for the this national title qualified her for the world title, and she's right here from ASD. We're also proud to have the only blue ribbon school in the state of Northern Lights ABC, and we're thankful for our locally and nationally recognized teacher Ben Walker at Roaming, as well as Adam Johnson tonight being the history teacher. And we're grateful to have our youth involved in so many activities, and we've had a strong showing as ASD, not only in the state football championship, I happen to be wearing the colors tonight, but flag football, volleyball, riflery, cross-country swimming and diving, and tennis. ASD students are participating, they're thriving, and it's a good place to be. And I just want to thank everyone who plays a role, and their big roles in educating and supporting our students. And I want our staff and the board especially to take time to celebrate what makes our district great, our teachers, our support staff, administrators, students, parents, and the entire community. I'm thankful for it all. Thank you very much, and have a great Thanksgiving week. That's it, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Any questions before I move on? Okay, we will move to our Student Advisory Board representative report.
Okay, at our last meeting, first of all, we met with the Student Nutrition Department, and they came in and told us that they are holding a mascot contest, which is where people can submit a mascot to the Student Nutrition, and hopefully we'll have some students come up with some creative ideas that will become the new mascot for our ASD lunches. Also, we had representatives come in from the Alaska Run for Women, which will be held on June 9th. And tell us about ways that we could help volunteer and other ways we can participate. Our Vice President, Daniel, gave a report on ASOG, which is the Alaskan Association of Student Governments. It's a big conference that all of the student governments in the entire state go to. And he just gave a brief summary of what we did there. I went and I gave a report on the AASB conference that Daniel, Isaac, and I attended the weekend before. Daniel and I also brought up a resolution that we wrote while at the Youth Leadership Institute portion of the AASB conference, and we presented it. We got it passed with unanimous consent, and then brought up a proposition that applied to the resolution we brought up. We now have an ad hoc committee that was created because of it, and we will be bringing that to the next school board meeting, hopefully. We were going to bring it tonight, but then Daniel had some car troubles, so we'll be doing that hopefully the next meeting. And we finished up our meeting with doing school reports. So,
thank you very much. Okay, moving to board conference and committee reports. We'll start with our Finance Committee. Ms. Snelling.
The Finance Committee did meet today. Thank you to those that attended. We did a brief overview of the district's 11 major funds, and that did get printed out if any board members needed an extra copy of it. CAFR update and a pro forma update. We'll be seeing both of those in Finance Committee, and I believe the pro forma will be in the work session on December 4th. Right now, the date of our next Finance Committee meeting is also December 4th, but that's going to be 2017 still at 2:30.
Thank you very much. Governance, please. Ms. Plunkett.
We met on the 14th of November and passed the 3,000s, the 7,000s, which are on our agenda tonight for first reading. We also reviewed the ARs related to purchasing for the 3,000s and approved them for moving forward. So we're in sync with our purchasing regulations when we actually go forward in January and vote. Our meetings, we have 2 scheduled so far, in December is December 6th and December 13th from 3 to 5 in room 150. We will be reviewing the 6,000s, and I'm hopeful that we only need 2 meetings. If after the first one it looks like we're going to need another, then we will schedule it on the 6th. The other thing that we're going to cover on the 13th are some additional changes for personnel, which is the 4,000s. Are we doing conferences as well?
Yes, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Mr. Donley, Communications.
Communications Committee met on November 14th. We discussed legislative priorities and prepared the document, which is in the members' packet for action tonight. Communications regarding bond proposals, but we did not get to that. We carried that over to another meeting. Legislative luncheons moving forward with a December 5th date. Welcoming Anchorage resolution, there was a draft resolution circulating for input. It will come forward at the December 4th board meeting. And under new business, the resolution honoring Joe Sanders was drafted by you, Madam President, and subsequently approved by at least 2 members of the committee that I know of, and will come forward for a vote this evening.
And your next meeting?
Will be December 12th at 11 a.m.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving back to conference report. I know a number of us attended the AESB conference, and I wanted to give board members an opportunity to focus on any sessions or speakers that they thought were of particular interest and value to the rest of the board. Ms. Plunkett.
I sent to Katy already, and I think I CC'd you, Tam, the assessment material for the presentation that I actually presided over, but it was on why collect data and the different types of assessment. Katy put it out in board docs. It was a lot of great material. There was 3 or 4, I think it was 4 different presentations. I think it's worthwhile to go out there and look at. There was a lot of great highlights, but to me that was good. The other one that was good, and I haven't pulled it, and I think there were other members that attended, was the legal information as well. So hopefully someone's going to talk about that as well. That was actually pretty good.
Any other board members wish to talk about any of their sessions? I'd like to hear from our 2 new board members on the new board member boot camp. Did they have you doing calisthenics?
I got to learn all about Robert's Rules of Order again. It was real interesting to me, and I have worked with the board as a representative of AEA for a lot of years, but not really been in contact with other boards around the state. And there really are a lot of differences. And so meeting people, many of them new to the board in other parts of the state, many of them on the board for a very long time, but also just realizing once again the very real differences in what life is like, that there are school boards that are boards for a single school in their village, and that's like the entire scope of it, as opposed to the Big 5 that really have such a broad range of students and buildings and locations, and even the larger districts in Alaska are very different from each other in the way they're laid out. I mean, in a way, we're most similar to Mat-Su, but the reality is Mat-Su covers such a bigger geographic area with fewer students. So it really, tremendous variety in terms of what all the districts are like and what the needs are as you go from one district to another.
Mr. Donley?
Spent a lot of time in the resolutions committee. There was a lot of work done there. We successfully had several amendments or new proposals that are on our proposed legislative priorities list that were passed. Also, I found as an attorney, I found the law seminars really fascinating and really informational. I very much appreciated those.
Okay. Ms. Marsett?
I always appreciate when the 5 large school districts can get together. It's good to hear from the other school districts to see what some of their challenges are and kind of share notes and talk about as the big 5, you know, how we might proceed on approaching legislative the session on funding, and some ideas in that respect too is always helpful.
Snelling?
Mine, my couple takeaways was not so much session specific. One of the things that I did appreciate was the opportunity to do the roundtables when we had the students there. I love hearing from the students, especially all around the state, just such different perspectives, you know, at the student level as well as the board member level. But then when the students went to YLI and the educators, the board members and the superintendents and the principals, you know, sat together, just so much stuff. I walked away with different ideas about, you know, school days and, you know, times and structures that, you know, is relative, you know, relevant to our conversation here today. But the other favorite part of the conference was the board game and going around to the 15 AASB board members and asking them all the same question. How do you empower every child every day? And I got 15 different answers. Several of them were focused on, a lot of other districts use PowerBook or PowerSchool. And it prompted a discussion with Mike Fleckenstein to track or to see what kind of data we have, what percentage of our children or our students use Q or Zangle, whichever one they're using right now, to access their grades, to access their assignments, to see what, you know, what tools are they using out, you know, what we're providing. And I also want to know the same for parents. You know, how are parents staying engaged using the tools that are being provided to them? And so that was just a fun little rabbit hole to start going down to see where that went. And then the other one was, it was Iggy that his answer was one of my favorites, reminding the students that they're at the top. You know, this is all about them and how much power they have over their education and how much, you know, they have to control their own destinies. We're all here, we're doing this, the teachers are doing their part, but they're right up there and they need to remember, you know, their position in all of this. And I think that's really important. So it was a good conference.
Thank you. I wanted to add to that, one of our keynotes was Zaretta Hammond, who did some professional development here earlier in this school year. And of course, talking about cultural responsiveness, which is a buzzword these days as we look about how we are interacting with our very diverse student body. She had a follow-up session that was quite impactful, and I haven't had a chance to put together the notes, but I will be sharing something with the board later from that particular session. I will note that both her keynote and that PowerPoint from her breakout session are already posted on board docs, as well as the sessions that Kathleen referred to. So if you have some specific documentation that we have, some of them aren't in the PowerPoint on the board app, but if you have some paper copies, I'm sure we can get someone to help us get them scanned and on our board docs. There was a kind of a follow-up to that when we were doing the snapshot sessions, which was like speed dating, and you got to do 4 in that period. I went to one that CERC did, and their association through our statewide school board association, they were talking about not only cultural responsiveness, but cultural competency, the standards we have in the state of Alaska. And I thought they did an excellent job, and the training that they're doing now for boards, for districts, for staff all over the state is quite effective. And I'll note that the December Boardsmanship Academy that's happening here in Anchorage, that is the key topic. So if that is an area of interest, let me know, and I'll work with Katy to see what our conference budget allows, if we can have some representation there. I do know Ms. Snelling as our representative to, wait, that's Council of Great City Schools. It's Ms. Plunkett, excuse me, our representative to AASB. Please let us know if you are planning to go, or if we can maybe pass that over to another board member if you are not able.
I've already used my free conference for the year. I used it in March.
Oh, okay. Oh, and it doesn't start over with the school year, it's an actual calendar?
It's annual.
Oh, darn. Okay, but let me know if you're interested in going to that, because I thought it was quite powerful just in the 11 minutes that I had at that one table. Another piece that I had not known about in the Anchorage School District, and so I'll be requesting some more information for the whole board, was the Rural CAP Elder Mentor or Foster Grandparent Program, and I hadn't realized we had those individuals working in a number of our schools. This is a federally funded program, and it provides an opportunity for lower income seniors age 55 or older to actually work in classrooms from 15 to 20 hours per week with students and serve as mentors, serve as just compassionate support for students. And I flash back to a scenario when I was still in the classroom. The teacher who taught next door actually had a grandmotherly type woman who sat in a rocking chair in the classroom and knit. But when there was a student having some type of an emotional hijacking, she would go out in the hall and work with that student and diffuse and bring the student back in when he or she was ready to join the classroom. And she became the grandmother for everybody, not just in that class, but on that entire team. And for many of them who didn't have a grandparent figure in their life, it became a real powerful, what we would call today social and emotional learning tool for many of those students. So I'd like to know more about that. From this presenter, they seem to have had a huge infusion of money. I don't know from where, but she said she has a lot more positions that she could fill. So I'd like to see maybe how we could utilize this paid-for service to assist in many of our classrooms. So I'm going to give this to the superintendent to do some more work and finding out. Last, I went to a session from the Fairbanks School District with their superintendent and curriculum director about the personalized learning shift that they've made. And it was just a small little taste test of the different things that are happening in their district. They haven't posted their PowerPoint yet, but when I get that, again, I'll share that in update to the board so that we can kind of keep an eye on what's happening with our neighbors to the north. But some really valuable sessions, and I thank board members for being there and representing our city and our state, and appreciate your participation. You'll see on the screen there a little collage of some of the photos. Of course, Kaylee did a fabulous speech, and she didn't talk about it, so I'm going to put her on the spot right now and tell us what did you volunteer to talk about to the entire statewide association?
So as part of the Youth Leadership Conference, we did a bunch of different little workshops that we went to, and I went to an oratory tell your story one. And this year the topic was you had to pick a value that something that you really valued, and my value was role models, and I spoke on how my mother is my role model, and through trying to emulate her, I've kind of tried to become a role model for my younger sister, who recently joined her student council, which just warms my heart because she said that she wanted to be just like me and join her student council. And yeah, that was my personal story from going as someone who was kind of role-less to a role model. So.
Appreciate that very much. And I was honored to give a welcome to the entire group. And people will be just shocked to find out that I talked about the 3 R's and relationships and the value of those relationships. So it was a great conference, and again, thank you all for participating. We're going to move on to public testimony on non-agenda items, and I don't have anybody signed up, but give an opportunity for anybody in the audience to speak on anything that's not on our agenda. We have some people signed up for action items later, but non-agenda items. Is there anyone wishing to give testimony? Seeing none, we move on to our consent agenda. Ms. Vice President.
I move to approve the consent agenda, ASD Memorandum 051 Personnel Report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Board members, please proceed to vote. And the consent agenda passes 7 yeas, 0 nay. We will move on to our action items.
Point of
And-
order.
Yes, sir.
Did yours not show on your screen also? How?
Yeah, but it was my error. I just figured it
Okay.
out. You have yours?
Yeah, it came through. It just didn't show up on my screen how I voted, like it usually does. It's okay. We'll be fine.
Okay, we will move to our action items. I want to give some information on those who wish to speak. The board welcomes public comments on agenda items, both action and non-action. We value public comment as it both ensures that we remain aware of public thoughts, ideas, and concerns, and informs our decision-making process. Excuse me, we have a table front and center with 2 seats and a microphone available for testimony when I call your name. You have 3 minutes to testify. You may begin speaking when the timer appears on the screen to your left and begins the countdown. When you have 30 seconds left, the number will turn yellow, and when the timer reaches 0, please finish your sentence. Okay, so our first item.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum 088, a resolution honoring Joe Sanders as an exemplary educator.
It's been moved and seconded, and I'm going to open this up for public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to make public testimony on this resolution? Seeing none, closing public testimony and opening it up for board discussion. And I will ask the board if they would indulge me. I would like to read the resolution aloud before we move into discussion. So this is a resolution to honor an exemplary educator, Joe Sanders. Whereas Joe Sanders' education career spans 45 years in the Anchorage School District, including 28 years teaching German at Bartlett High School. Whereas Joe Sanders was co-founder of Rilke Schule German School of Arts and Science, where she taught and served as the curriculum director. Whereas long before the ASD integrated social emotional learning, Jo addressed her students' need to belong by making each member a family member from a traditional region of Germany or a German-speaking country, and with the members of these families interacting in a way that simulated real life. Whereas Jo Sanders founded the annual Anchorage School District German camp, Lager Nordlich, now in its 45th year of existence, and participated with her colleagues for years in these weekend camps given for students. Whereas Jo Sanders set up the first partner school exchanges in German, Russian, Norwegian, and Spanish. Whereas Jo Sanders founded regional and state language declamation competitions. Whereas Jo Sanders felt that cross-cultural exchanges were vital for her students, she spent school breaks and her entire summers with students in Germany. Whereas Jo Sanders was a Fulbright exchange teacher in Germany in 1985 to 1986. Whereas Jo Sanders created the first content-based cross-curricular language courses, the Natural History of Alaska, Medieval European History, and 20th Century German History. Whereas Jo Sanders created over 27 original classroom units, which she shared free of charge with teachers around the country. Whereas Jo Sanders directed hundreds of students in German language play productions. Whereas Jo Sanders served as a host teacher and mentor to many aspiring German language teachers. Whereas Jo Sanders was active in AFLA, Alaskans for Language Acquisition, the statewide professional organization for world language teachers, and served as its president. Whereas Jo Sanders served as the state and national AATG, American Association of Teachers of German, president and treasurer. Whereas Jo Sanders participated in the PNCFL, Pacific Northwest Council of Foreign Language Conferences, and served as its president as well as on its board of directors. Whereas Jo Sanders participated in the ACTFL, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. Whereas Jo Sanders gave 149 language workshops over a 25-year period for no pay at local, state, and national conferences. Whereas Jo Sanders served on the committee which wrote the Alaska 2000 World Language Standards in 1994-95. Whereas Joe Sanders served as the national co-chair for a special interest group, Kinder lernen Deutsch, an initiative to get children learning language, as well as the chair for the Immersion Special Interest Group. Whereas Joe Sanders facilitated the assistance of native German interns in classrooms through the Amity program, which brought Rilke Schule the distinction as the flagship of immersion programs in the United States. Whereas Joe Sanders was honored as one of 3 foreign language teachers in the United States for the Walt Disney Salute to American Teachers in 1990. Whereas the Federal Republic of Germany awarded Joe Sanders with its most prestigious Federal Cross of Merit for her extensive service in the promotion of German language and culture in 1991. Whereas Joe Sanders was awarded the AFLA Outstanding Teacher Award in 2001. Whereas Joe Sanders received the prestigious ACTFL Florence Steiner Award for Outstanding Foreign Language Teacher in the United States in 2005. Whereas the Rilke Schule German School of Arts and Science has recently dedicated their library in honor of her vast contributions to their community, a fitting honor for a woman who is a voracious reader. Whereas Joe Sanders modeled lifelong learning by studying 11 languages. Whereas Joe Sanders work as an educator has positively impacted thousands of students. Whereas Joe Sanders is an influential leader of German teachers responsible for the establishment, growth, and longevity of the ASD German language program. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Anchorage School Board honors her leadership, vitality, and dedication to the teaching profession, raising the bar for all world language teachers. And that is open for any discussion before our vote. See none, the discussion is closed. Student Advisory Board advisory vote.
Yay.
Board members, please vote. And the motion passes 7 yea, 0 nay. And for any of the Sanders family observing on TV, the resolution will be signed and forwarded to the family. Thank you so much.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum 06. Okay. I move to approve ASD Memorandum 067 and authorize the superintendent to accept Title I-C Migrant Competitive Grant Award from the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development deed in the amount of $80,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now opening for public testimony. See none, public testimony is closed. Opening for board discussion. Closing board discussion. Advisory vote.
Yay.
Board members, please vote. And the motion carries 7 yea, 0 nay.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum 082 and adopt the 2018 Anchorage School District legislative priorities.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now opening for public testimony. Closing public testimony, opening for board discussion. Ms. Marsett.
So when we look at the BSA, and I've had a little bit of heartburn with this, but I've done more research and talked to some other individuals, but appropriate funding to halt further cuts. I guess when I look at appropriate funding, it's not to halt further cuts, but to fund education as it needs to be funded. So, and I know we've read this before, but I just started looking at it again, and I just feel like we're asking them not to make any further cuts. And what we should be asking them as advocates for our students is for them to fund what we need and not just fund as is. Because the problem is, if we continue with the flat funding, we're looking at substantial increase in class sizes, reduction of staff, consolidation of schools possibly. So, and I know a lot of people, you know, when we go to Juneau, they'll say, well, what do you suggest? Well, you know, when somebody comes to me and says, what are you going to do as a school board member because it's your job, you're right, it's my job. So when I go to the legislative and I say, you know, you need to fund education, it's not my job to tell them how to do it. It's their job to figure out how to do it. That's what they're there for. So I would like to see us ask for the funding needed for our district and not just a halt to further cuts.
So are you proposing some language?
I'm proposing that we have appropriate funding to meet the needs of, let me see, I don't want to wear this, appropriate funding, anybody can jump in here, to educate our students on the level of academic structure or support that they need to be successful. And in the case of what we're doing is we're not doing that when we just ask them to halt further cuts. And that could be said a little more eloquently, but.
Yeah, let's take a 2-minute at ease and we'll
Okay,
get this
thank you.
language. Let's get a pad. You can just say appropriate funding to support.
Yeah, without
Alaska students.
yeah, without the whole.
You need to put it in writing. Ms. Marsett, you
Yes.
wanted to make an amendment?
Yes, I would. I'd like to move to change the language in the first legislative priority to read appropriate funding for the education of all students.
Do Do I have a second? No second? Are you guys waiting to see it written? I have to have a second before I put it up.
Second, ma'am.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Let's see the written language. Okay.
Can I make a statement in support of my amendment?
Yes, I was going to open it for discussion now on the amendment.
So again, we as a school board are elected to advocate for our students and our teachers. And we do that by advocating for the funds that we need. It doesn't mean that we won't be cut or we won't have flat funding, but we're not doing our job if we're not asking for what we need. And that's how I feel about this. As an elected official, I feel that the community, my students, the teachers, the staff, everyone depends on me as a board member to do what's best for the school district. And what's best for the school district is to ask for additional funding.
And Ms. Plunkett.
I have a different opinion. I think we also need to be realistic, given our state's finances and the state economy, and to go to our legislature and say, you need to come up with more money when we don't have a fiscal plan and don't even have the dollars at this moment to do what I would like to see them do. We need a fiscal plan first, and that's what I would like to see move forward so that we know what our dollars are. There are other things I think that are more important. To me, holding the line, which is what this does, is where I want, is where I see it more important.
Mr. Holleman.
Yes, while I support the intent, I am going to argue that we keep the language the same. To me, what's written originally is clear, and in asking that they fund us at a level not to be cut, it is actually asking for a modest increase, and clearly so, as opposed to flat funding, which absolutely leads to cuts in the district in some fashion. Having done it before and been there, if you talk about funding for what you need to educate everybody, there's no ready agreement on what that is. And the discussion goes off the rails at that point, I think. Given the climate in the state, getting enough of an increase that we don't have to lay people off and we don't have to eliminate programs, realistically, I think is as good as we can do. And I hate saying that because I do think we have eliminated a lot of great programs. I think we've eliminated people and programs that have meant a lot to students. They're not there right now. We could easily expand our budget quite a bit to get those back and be doing good stuff with all the money. But it's just not there until the legislature does put together a long-range plan and has some outlook. So as frustrating as it is, I like the original language in terms of having a really clear point to take to legislators and argue for them.
Ms. Marsett.
So I did ask the district to put together what it would look like in the next 2 years for flat funding. And basically that's what we're looking at is flat funding. I mean, I don't call it an increase, even however you want to figure that in. It's flat funding, and we've been flat funded since 2010. And if we continue down this path, next year we're going to be having a lot tougher discussions than we are now. And if we don't start presenting to our legislators, I get it that we're in tough times, but you know what? They need to do their job, and they're not doing their job. So I have to do my job. And if that means making them do their job or getting them to at least think about it and showing them where we're going to be in the school district as far as class sizes within the next 2 years, then that's my job, is to show them how their decisions are impacting our students for now and in long term, because I don't see a solution to this problem anytime soon, and it's only going to continue to affect us and our students. We think we have large classrooms now. They're going to get a lot larger. You think you're going to lose teachers. We're going to lose a lot more. There is no easy answer to this, but, and maybe we do need to come up with a plan and how we do that, but that's our job, is to decide how we want to ask for those funds and what funds we want to ask for, and be specific on, maybe it's class size. Maybe we need to ask for funds so that we can lower our class size. I mean, we can be specific, but we also have to point out and show to them that even though we have had flat funding, we've cut positions, we've cut programs, yeah, we're still doing some great things out there. But you know what? You talk to our kids. I talked to our kids this time at the Alaska Association of School Boards, and they are starting to feel the impact. One student said, I'm in a classroom of 49, and then he's in a classroom of 20, and he says, it is impacting my education because I can't focus, and my grade is suffering. So where do we say enough is enough, and where do we say we stand up for what we believe is right?
Ms. Snelling?
I want to choose my words carefully. I think we need to be mindful of our language that we use regarding our legislators, because the reverse can be said about us. Until we can guarantee that we are spending all of our dollars maximized to 100%, efficiency, they can look at places where we can be doing better as well. And so I have a hard time going and asking the legislature for more money that they don't have, when our budget may not be fully in ship shape. We're getting there. I do believe we are making good changes, but I don't believe we are where we need to be either. And so until that happens, I have a very, very hard time going hat in hand. I also don't believe our legislators are blind to our needs. I don't believe they're blind to our circumstances. I don't think our needs, is probably any different than any of the other districts. A lot of people are hurting right now. And so I think choosing our words carefully would be a very wise thing. I agree with the original wording and the original intent. I believe there's too much vagueness in this, because they might see it fit to make appropriate funding less if we're not careful. And so I'm going to vote against this motion. As well intended as it might be, I'm going to vote against it. And yeah.
Okay, I'd like an opportunity to reiterate the point that Mr. Holleman made about the statement, appropriate funding to halt further cuts, is in a sense an increase, because we have inflationary pressures on our budget every year. So to halt the funding cuts in our own budget, that is somewhat of an increase. We also have funding basically under the busing and the bond debt reimbursement piece too. If we have an inflation-proof transportation budget, then we can quit stealing from Peter to pay Paul, taking from our operating budget, which impacts our classrooms, in order to pay for transportation. And then, of course, the debt bond reimbursement is a bigger question in terms of not asking the Anchorage taxpayers to foot 100% of our bonds, to give that some flexibility in terms of funding. So I think we put together a funding ask that's realistic and may be a stretch for them, but that's where I am agreeing with you, Ms. Marsett, is that's the stretch I'm willing to ask them to do at this point. And so I'm voting for the original language and will not vote for this amendment. Mr. Holleman?
And just to clarify quickly, I do mean funding that prevents cutting positions, cutting programs, cutting services. At any moment we see something we can cut to save money, we should always do that. But in the coming year, I'd like for it to not be forced by budget. And that does mean 2 or 3% increase somewhere in the money that comes to the district. So if I wasn't clear on that, I want to be.
Are there any other comments? Okay, at this point you'll be voting on the amendment. And I need our student advisory vote.
Nay.
Betty, you do a voice vote, she didn't get yours. And the motion fails, 1 yea, 6 nay, or the amendment to the motion fails. We're now back at the original motion. Is there any further discussion on the original motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. Ms. Spencer, your advisory vote?
Yay.
Board members, please vote. And the motion carries 6 yea and 1 nay.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum 081 and adopt the attached resolution recognizing November 13th through 17th, 2017 as American Education Week for all employees in the Anchorage School District.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll open this for public testimony. Seeing none, closing public testimony, opening for board discussion. Closing board discussion, advisory vote.
Yay.
Please vote. And the motion carries 7 yea, 0 nay.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum 077, the transfer of funds for personnel changes and the purchase of English Language Arts ELA reading curriculum, grades 3 through 5, and the associated upward limit changes. Additionally, the administration recommends the school board approve a reallocation of upper limit spending authority for the food service fund.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, opening for public testimony. Seeing none, public testimony is closed. Board discussion. I have one question for the administration. Could you explain to us what is the professional development plan for, briefly, I know it's I don't want a whole presentation, but on the, for the English language curriculum for the 3 through 5?
Madam President, the professional development, we don't have it devised. We are
waiting.
Right, we are actually getting K2 right before we roll anything out about what's going to not. But there will be comprehensive, more structured implementation, but don't have that yet.
And is this anticipated for rollout in the next school year?
Depending how we accomplish our goals with K2 by January, depending, I'll make that call in January.
Okay, so we'll get further information on that. I just wanted, I was thinking about that in terms of purchasing this. I wanted to know how we were going to roll this out. Okay. Any other board discussion?
If I could get this window out of the way a second. My screen keeps popping up to vote, and I need to look at something.
I can close it.
She has a question.
Yeah, I do have a question because I thought we had already talked about the funding for the assistant superintendent, and that funding was already in there since he's already in there.
Dr. Bishop?
Through the president to Vice President Marsett, the position was in the budget as we rolled out from last year. However, it was funded internally by having other adjustments in the budget, and to be totally transparent, going before the board because of the amount was just this action. So it was budgeted, it was planned. Remember, there were positions eliminated, positions added, difference, changing of salaries of lots of folks. So it was all made in the public, but due to this one being over 200 grand and taking from others, I wanted to be sure that it went in front of the board.
So you haven't been getting a paycheck, Mark?
And Madam President, it is over 200,000 due to the benefits. He is not, does not have a salary over 200,000.
Okay, any other Board questions, discussion? Okay, I'll take our advisory vote.
Yay.
Please vote. And the motion passes 6 yea, 1 nay.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum 072, the April 2018 bond proposal in the amount of 56 point, is that point? I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. .285 million as outlined in the memorandum.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I open for public testimony. We do have one person signed up for testimony. Mr. Griffin, please come forward. You may begin.
Okay, President Agosti-Gisler and Dr. Bishop, board members. I'm Bob Griffin. I was appointed to the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee by Superintendent Como about 6 years ago and been serving in that capacity since. I think she put me on the board after a couple of bond failures to possibly diversify the point of views that were on the kayak at the time. I'd first like to say that I'd like to thank the staff and the CPC and the CIC members who put a lot of hard work into this bond proposal, and I'm pleased to say the product has stayed true to our data-driven process that we've developed over the years at the CIC. The board the recommendations are a dramatic improvement to the earlier working documents. It's truly a great team of dedicated public servants and community volunteers dedicated to our community. That said, I'm testifying tonight to encourage a small change in the bond proposal. I'm asking the board to replace the $4.4 million fire suppression project for Abbott Loop Elementary listed on the board proposal with an equal or greater value priority of projects on the master deferred maintenance list. There's at least 20 facilities that are operating with worse FCI scores than Abbott Loop, which is currently experiencing an end to a waiver in about 2020 for the sprinkler system. I think before we put this $75 per square foot renovation project in front of the voters, I think we should probably get a little bit higher fidelity estimate on the rough order of magnitude estimate that the sprinklers project is being put before the voters. In addition, I think we should probably have at least a year to digest the Abbott Loop and other facilities that require major maintenance and see how they fit within the Western Demographics findings. After listening closely to the Western Demographics presentation tonight, I'm even more convinced that this project should be delayed. There's a wood frame facility built in 1958 with the last major renovation in 1977 in a cluster of attendance area of low attendance area schools. Given those elements, those are many of the elements that the Western Demographics presentation discussed. To be fair to my co-chairs and other members, I did start this discussion after our last meeting about Abbott Loop. Having misgivings, I started an email chain about a couple of days ago. There have been a couple other members that have chimed in and also have expressed some reservations on the sprinkler project. I don't think it would hurt at all to delay this one more year. Inlet View Elementary School is in the same circumstance with the sprinkler waiver. It's essentially the only element of the school that's substandard. It's operating under the waiver right now with the exit doors that go out. So,
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify from the public? Seeing none, I'm closing public testimony, opening for board discussion. Mr. Donley?
I'd move to amend the proposition to replace to reduce the amount for each project by 10%. That'd be a total reduction of $5,628,500, so that the final amount of the bond would be $50,656,500.
It's been moved and seconded, so let's open it up for board discussion. Would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, although there's several explanations from the administration about the administrative overhead totals, in looking at the percentages that I was provided, it just seems like it's excessive. It ended up being around 45%, and that's without the 3% for the bond and insurance costs and 5% for an anticipated escalation costs. And I did agree with the analysis that getting down closer to the 30% range would be a more appropriate. And I do think in the private sector it ranges between 10 and 30%. So this would just be a 10% reduction, which I think leaves about 35% for administrative overhead.
Anyone else wishes to speak to this? Dr. Bishop, would you like to speak to it?
Madam President, I don't have a response, but certainly reducing it by 10% is the board's purview. They were based off of deed allowances, and certainly we can, look to spend the money on the projects, as listed. And I don't know if Mr. Roth wanted to chime in. It is a 10% reduction, and generally it is that the estimates at the full amount for which we can.
Dr. Bishop, through the board president, thank you for the opportunity to comment. With regards to the estimates on the proposal, I'm the first to acknowledge that these estimates are based off of formulas, VFA and deed formulas. But I would also offer that we take some risk. I think if we put a bond proposal before the public and the public does vote for and approve the bond proposal, we do have an imperative to complete those. And the risk being that if we do reduce by 10%, that we could potentially fall under the amount that the public approved. Now, that may be unlikely, but it's a risk. And I do recall Dr. Bishop stating at the last meeting that from the district perspective, given that the public is paying back 100% of whatever they approve, that the district commitment is that we would not spend or sell bond authority beyond what we would need to do to complete these projects. So I would argue that we go into this understanding that, but that we stick to the amount. I think that it's based off of sound fundamentals. Again, if we don't need it, we don't sell the authority and we don't spend the money.
So I want to follow up, and I want to make sure my understanding is correct. It's in a sense an upper limit in terms of what we would need, and when the project is complete is when we sell the bonds to pay for it, or as it's going into the completion phase is when we sell the bonds, so we know at that point that we're selling the bonds exactly what the project is costing.
Madam President, I'm going to have our CFO answer questions in regard to the sale of the bonds.
To the board president, when the bonds pass the voters in April and we have the authority to sell the bonds, Capital Plans looks at the next 24 months worth of projects in the timeline, and we generally sell enough of the authority to cover the next 24 months. So, which is why, by and large, any bond that gets passed, there's still authority remaining after 4 and 5 years. So now that we have transitioned from state debt reimbursement to 100% taxpayer, we would still look at the timelines, actual costs, and a much clearer projected cost as you get towards the end of a project. And we wouldn't sell that authority because we don't want to have money left over after the completion of a project.
Okay, Ms. Marsett. Thank you.
So maybe I'm a little confused, but at one time I thought, or it was my understanding that we did have money left over and that we were looking to ask for an exemption or something so that we could use those funds?
Through the president to Member Marsett, we still have remaining authorization to sell for bonds 12 through 15. On the bonds 12, 13, 14, there was a combination of 60-40, 70-30, depending on the bonds. So our logic was, since the taxpayers would only have to pay either 30 or 40%, that if deed would reapply the authority to use that original bond on a like project, that we would actually be saving the taxpayer money as opposed to asking for a 100% taxpayer reimbursable debt, like a current bond. So that's true. As we get close to completing the 2012, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a couple $1 million left. If deed says yes, you can still use that. It's within the spirit of the original bond, and we still get state debt reimbursement, then it's kind of our duty to the taxpayer to find the cheapest and most efficient way to use that.
So, through the president, so the most recent bonds we have not sold over, but the prior ones, when it was 40 cents on the dollar, we did sell the full amount to be able to stretch, if you will, the work to be done. But, you know, we would prefer the upper limit, but getting a bond at an acceptable rate of 10% less, I mean, we'll make it work. But that was the explanation about why the numbers came in where they were.
Ms. Snelling?
I'm looking at, so when we talk about past years' numbers and open amounts, the last thing I have to go on is the year ending 2016 CAFR, because we don't have the 17 yet. And we had 13% remaining on 2012 and 17.8% remaining on 13 and 9.6% remaining on 14. And so it does seem, and I know that I don't know that many people were here for any of those processes or anything like that. That's just what's left, you know, as of a year ago. And so I do think that there is room to tighten it up, the 10%, and I would feel better about, you know, passing and promoting a bond that's a little tighter in that, especially when we are at the 100% expectation for our community. I would support this for those reasons.
Ms. Marsett?
So the dates that she's speaking of, 12, 13, 14, have we finished those projects, or have we even started some of those projects?
Through the president to Member Marsett, we have not completed every single project from 12 through 14 at this time, although very, very close. And we suspect that there will be some residue or residual authority on those 12, 13. But at this point, we're not completed, so we don't have the final tally. So I wouldn't want to guess as to what that exact dollar amount might be.
And I know I've asked, can I ask?
Yes,
I know I've asked this once before. Why in the heck does it take to finish 2012 and 2017-18?
As with anything, we have limited capacity to be able to do everything all at once. Some of them take a year just to do the design. Some of them, I mean, on HVAC systems, you could probably get quite a few done in one summer. We're still working on a student nutrition roof for this summer that's been planned since well before I was in the district, at least 4 years ago. So it's really, you have the capacity of the local area and the ability to manage complex projects. You just don't have the capacity. And we have such a short work session. If you've got to do all the roofs, but you can't get them all done in one summer, you can't do it while school's in session. So things just keep pushed to where summer is our construction season, just like the roads.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Donley. It's a I don't know if you have an answer for this, but was your intention in lowering this bond amount to put some other project on our deferred maintenance list onto the bond?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Holleman?
Having watched bonds in Anchorage for a long, long time, I do think it appears, and I think logically so, that we generally bond for an amount we feel extremely confident will complete the job. This, I think, like you said, brings us closer to an edge that we may wind up having some projects go over, and we'd have to revisit and either bump something off the list or perhaps go back in a following year to ask voters again to expand that. And I think that creates some political consequences or complications. But I think in essence, we're trying to give a truer number, certainly a leaner number to the voters to approve to begin with. I don't think it's an unrealistic number. Things don't have to go perfect for the bonds to come in at this percentage less, although we have no idea exactly what the future will be. I support the amendment. I think it doesn't put pressure on our folks to perform and cut it closer. It may come back to the board to have to correct it if things don't go well in the future. But if the result is that the numbers we take to the public more accurately reflect the cost of what gets delivered to the public, I think that's positive for us in the long run.
Ms. Marsett?
So, in my recollection, with the Gladys Woods and Airport Heights and the schools that we just finished up, it was my understanding that some of those came in at a savings which we were able to use to finish one of the other ones because we didn't have enough funds, correct?
I'm going to reference Tom Roth, if you have that.
Through the board president, my regrets, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
I'm pretty sure that I understood.
Yes,
I just don't know the numbers. But that we did come in, we had some savings on some projects which we were able to move over to another project so that we could finish that project. And even though it came in a little bit short and they didn't get everything they needed, which I think was, might have been Glasswood.
Madam President, I do remember we saved about $600,000 on Rabbit Creek. You announced that, actually.
And I remember also making that statement at Airport Heights that we came in under budget and earlier, something phenomenal like that. So,
but I think, I don't know that lowering the amount of the bond is the question, is the answer. I think being transparent and just letting the public know where the funds are going, if they go back, or if they're going to another project. The money that we're asking for is going towards capital improvement. It may not be, I understand what they voted on, it might be on something else, but as long as we're transparent in that fact and show them where the money's going and where we're ahead and where we're behind or whatever, I think that serves the purpose also. And I would much rather come in a little ahead than to be short on a project and not be able to finish it.
I have a question that may not seem germane to the amendment, but it will impact how I vote on this. I was confused in reading the memorandum. I understand that the amount of bond debt we're retiring is equivalent to $5.93 per $100,000 of home or assessed valuation of the property. But my understanding was that the new bond amount of the $56,285 would have a impact of $6.70, so that it was not a wash. It was actually a small increase to the impact on the taxpayer. So if I could have a clarification on that, I would appreciate it. Dr. Bishop?
Mr. Anderson.
To the President, we would have to sell the entire bond all at once, which we certainly wouldn't, nor could we, because we couldn't get those projects done in a time frame that would allow us to do that. Plus, we'd have to sell the remaining bond debt from last year to really start outpacing. We knew this year we could sell upwards of 60 million because some of the money some of the authorization that we're selling this year is still also includes state debt reimbursement. So we knew that we could sell up to 60 million, and that's what we budgeted for. And quite honestly, the capacity isn't out there, and we plan on selling 32.5 million this year. So we're well under for the next year or two from realistically even being able to consider having more debt than what we're paying off.
So I may be confident when I talk to the taxpayer that even at this higher amount than the amended amount, it will not have an impact on the taxpayer in the next
That is correct.
tax cycle.
I mean, every year when we do the actual sale, and as we talk bond debt during the finance committee meetings, and we start talking about the future sales, my office will be providing, as we get closer and we know the actual interest rates, the actual true impact. And what we'll see this year is a market decrease well below what we worst cased it last January through March as everyone was selling it. And we have that process in place, and that won't change.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from board members before we vote on this amendment? Hearing none? Oh, yes, you may.
So I don't think it'll affect this amendment, but I would like to talk about, well, let's vote on this first and then I'll.
Okay, advisory vote?
Nay.
Board members, please vote. Stars used to go through.
Yeah, I had to bring it back. Oh, sorry.
And the amendment passes 4 yea, 3 nay. Okay, we're back to the main motion now. Is there any further discussion on the main motion as amended?
So given the information of the testimony and given where we're at and looking at our schools and the demographics and that sort of thing, and the fact that Inlet View also has that waiver until 2020 and we're not looking at sprinkler system for them yet either, and that there are schools out there with a higher need, should we bump Abbott Loop and move something up on the bond that is of more need?
I don't have the answer to your question.
Well, okay, so I guess, I guess I don't know how to, I
Are
guess
you
I
going to
would,
direct that to the superintendent, or are you directing that to the full board? Who are you directing that to?
well, I'll go to the superintendent.
Yeah,
so
Madam
we can answer
President,
it.
I mean, certainly we could wait on Abbott Loop, but by the same conversation that we just had, if Western demographics brought a change in a suggestion, then you wouldn't sell that. You wouldn't do that project. However, there is in that school, what was noted, what we studied, is that interestingly enough, that school is in an area that has affordable housing, that is clustered affordable housing. So that is in the data report that I was able to read, which was in more depth. So I'm not, I was convinced Abbott Loop initially would be for how old it is, but it might be, a rebuild, or it might be suggested. I don't really know what's going to happen, but by the same token, you could take it off or wait, or we could keep it on there with the 50 million and not sell that bond if it wasn't a project that would actually come to fruition.
Mr. Holleman?
And I have to apologize for not asking this in earlier work sessions, but how many of our school buildings lack a fire suppression system?
Madam President, we have Inlet View,
Abbott Loop.
Loop, and then just portions of like East
High
High.
school.
And service.
And service.
Piece of service.
All? Not all of service?
Not all of service,
Just
no.
parts of, okay. Thank you.
Portion. And the biggest impact right now is in that insurance as well. So I just do want to make a statement that it is not an unsafe building for students, that fire alarms, we have a fire alarm, students would exit, people would exit. By the time the fire suppression system, that is protection of property primarily first. But it is wrapped into a safety, so I don't want anyone to believe that we have to leave schools right now.
And also a follow-up question that impacts my vote on this, or the potential amendment that will be put forth by Board Member Marsett, was the fire suppression system for Inlet View was not put forward on this bond because it's part of a total a renovation package for the school, a much bigger endeavor than is envisioned for Abbott Loop. Was that the rationale of the CPC?
Tom Roth, if you can.
Through to the President, that's correct. The fire suppression system in Inlet View was integrated into that broader building life extension project for Inlet View.
And please remind me on what that broader number was as it stands on the capital improvement projects list.
Madam President, I would say that this Abbott Loop was put forward due to the conversations last year. The biggest conversation last year in regard to the bond was about Abbott Loop. And it was mentioned several times at this board this year to just get Abbott Loop done. So removing it and holding it like we are Inlet View is a viable option. It was specifically added because of board member comments.
To the President, to answer your question, reference the Inlet View, the project was estimated to cost $13,866,000.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that my memory was more or less in that ballpark. Thank you. I have no further questions. Ms. Marsett?
Through the President, through the Superintendent, what are the next, if you've got it right there, what are the next two emerging projects that have a higher rating than Abbott Loop?
Through the President, the member Marsett, I think we probably would have to go back and do some analysis on that. I'd be a little reluctant just to throw something out just to fill an amount.
Okay, is there any other? Yes. Ms.
So
Marsett.
if it's already rated and it's already on the sheet, how would you just be throwing something out? It would be whatever the next project is that has the highest rating. That would be, because Abbott Loop falls below some of those other ones, it would be the ones that have the emerging, is it FCI?
Yes.
Is higher than Abbott Loop. So those would be the ones that you would take a look at. So what are those particular ones that have a higher rating?
So through the President to member Marsett, see, that's the thing. I agree with you. That would be the method. I don't have a list in front of me.
Okay.
Of a decremented sheet to kind of get to that amount that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board member comments, questions? Okay, we've lost our student advisory member. It is a school night. Her right was here. So we'll move to board vote, please. And the motion carries 6 yea, 1 nay. Ms.
Madam President, may I make a statement so that administration, as we get a review by Western Demographics that will come out prior to April, we will take the direction from this board in regard to that school and the amount from the fire suppression. And we will not move forward if it isn't needed. Thank you.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum 074 and adopt the tentative agreement between the district and the Totem Association, which will establish terms and conditions of employment for individuals in this unit during the period between July 1, 2018 and June 30th, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any testimony from the public? Seeing none, public testimony is closed. Board discussion is open. Closing board discussion. Board members, please vote. Who seconded that?
Who seconded?
Kathleen, I believe.
Yeah. She has catching up. Oh, sorry.
And the motion passes 7 yea and 0 nay. Okay, that concludes the action item segment of our agenda. We'll now move to non-action items. Are there any non-action items that board members wish to discuss? I do have one small question on Memorandum 078, sale of surplus relocatable building 11382.
Madam President, I'm going to request Tom Roth. This is a spot-on one. Please, Tom. Would you like the question, or we could assume?
To the President, if it's clarification, that building was provided to the Maplewood program, and what the district is doing is transferring ownership title to that agency.
Okay.
And Madam President, it would be more expensive to move that than the value of that building.
So I knew there was some reason. Because I was wondering, if we're now doing a garage sale on all our relocatables, why was it just one? Because I understand there's a number of relocatables that we might want to move out of our inventory, but that makes sense.
And this is a special program within the district, and there was a definite need for support.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or comments on this memo? Okay, moving from non-action items to future items, are there any items that board members wish to have considered to be included on future agendas? Seeing none, we move to our second segment of public testimony on non-agenda items. An opportunity for anybody in the public who wishes to speak to the board for 3 minutes on any item. Seeing none, public testimony on non-agenda items is closed. We open up for school board and administration comments. Ms. Plunkett.
Since no one's from Totem chose to come up, and they're all there in a row, stayed for the whole meeting and last meeting, I think this contract is the only one that we've done recently so far in advance. And I just wanted to say thank you to the administration and to Totem.
And I would just say as well to the professionals of Totem and their leadership team. So thank you.
Thank you. And seeing as no board members are jumping to the forefront, I will let Mr. Holleman go first.
one I did want to acknowledge last week was educational support.
American
Professionals
Education Week?
Yeah, let me make sure I don't fumble this. Often educational support professionals are the unrecognized people in a school building that really make it work smoothly. Frequently, they also connect with kids in ways that a lot of teachers don't. We overlook their role frequently, and we should not. The other item I wanted to emphasize tonight is a student project at Holleman Elementary. They are making and marketing these centerpieces. If you go to 907bobcats.com, you can order one online for pickup, I think, this coming week, and still have one on your table. For all those people that think that kids are still sitting in rows doing worksheets every day, there's a lot more to this than just fundraising. It is a project where kids do the estimates in advance, not unlike our professional team when they're renovating a building. They go through what materials they'll need, they plan the production, they make it happen, and they look at the results afterwards and in terms of their overall success. So it's very much part of their education in a very practical sense, as well as creating some beauty to go on the tabletop for Thanksgiving.
And thank you very much for facilitating that lovely donation to the board. Thank you. I wanted to give a shout out to, one more time to the School Business Partnership Leaders in the School event that's taking place this entire month of November, and encourage my board members and any other administrators who want to be involved in that. It's a great opportunity to go shadow a principal in a school. I spent the 3 hours with Bartlett Principal Sean Prince and was able to learn even more. Even though I've been to that school a number of times, each time you're there for an intense look at what's happening in the schools, it's you learn something new. And he was actually laughing when I told him I was so impressed at how quiet the school was for a high school. And I guess because I'm frequently at East High School during lunch, and the difference in number of students and the volume between a regular class time and a lunchtime is notable, but because he thought that was comical. But nonetheless, I appreciated his participation, and SBP does a debrief luncheon at the end of the month. In fact, it's next week's, but you have 1 week's time to still do some type of an exchange. And if you want, I offered Mr. Prince an opportunity to follow in the footsteps of a board member, but he declined that opportunity to come spend from 2 to 9 p.m. here today. But nonetheless, it might be interesting for those of you that have other careers in the community. The other thing I wanted to do a shout out to was both the staff for putting on a fabulous Board Leadership Academy session last week. We toured in warehouse and purchasing, and I had some very positive comments from our participants in the Board of Leadership Academy about the volume and the quantity of work done by those groups. So a big kudos to that, and particularly to Kathy Moffett and Katy Grant for setting up that opportunity. We have another Leadership Academy session happening on the 19th of December, and this will be student transportation, so we'll be coming your way. Check. Okay. Finally, All-State Music Festival happened, and I went back to Bartlett after I'd been there 3 hours just to be able to see a little bit of the performances in the bands, the orchestra, and the choirs of students from all over the state, and meet many of the visiting professors from universities around the country who came to work with not only Anchorage School District students, but students from all over the state of Alaska. And once again, totally impressed with the caliber of music that our students perform, and that their teachers, their instructors guide them to do. So kudos to all of our music folks. And that ends my comments. Anyone else? So, happy Thanksgiving to our superintendent, to my fellow board members, and to all the staff and students of the Anchorage School District, and of course to our community. Dr. Bishop, do you have anything you wanted to add? I thought you were grabbing your microphone.
Well, I was just going to say happy birthday, Jimmy.
Yes, happy birthday.
To the president, thank you.
To our CFO. Dr.
I
Bishop?
just, again, want to just give my gratitude. This is a great job and a great district, and we're doing great things, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
This meeting is adjourned.